I would like to say a little bit about the Geddes work, okay, because that is in two bits. Geddes had an enormous collection of city plans, and he collected them, well, because he was convinced that the city had embedded in it virtually all the knowledge contained in our civilization. I mean, he regarded the city as the kind of biggest and most glorious artifact that human civilization has ever produced. And that's primarily because he saw the city as a knowledge environment, that he saw actually embedded in the city all the knowledge of the world. So he had these plans that he collected, and the other reason for collecting them is because he used them. They were part of a city's exhibition that was supposed to tour permanently around the world. In fact, it made it to about 6 UK cities and about the same number of cities in India. But the ambition was that it would be continually on the move and informing people about how glorious cities are. So that's the plans. The other work is represented in this corner, and it's his lecture notes and his what he called thinking machines, which were kind of diagrams for trying to organize his thought on cities. And it's he was quite an eccentric thinker. He was an extraordinarily broad thinker and produced kind of ideas which are also extraordinarily malleable. I mean, people kind of dig into him and draw out different things. And it's also quite enigmatic. I mean, when you look at this stuff, you're going to see something discursive, but you're not going to see something which kind of reveals itself like the way a crime novel reveals itself. It simply doesn't work that way. And the way, I'll just say a word about how I see this work. It's a view that I can substantiate with the evidence, but it's certainly not the only way this work is viewed. I think the idea that he struggles with, probably throughout his career, is how to match people to places. And in a little more detail, how to match the characteristics of a society with the characteristics of the environments that they build to live well in them, okay? So there's something, and that's where this idea of evolution comes from. His key book, I forgot to mention, this thing was triggered by the fact that his key text, Cities in Evolution, is 100 years old, okay? So anyway, this idea about matching the characteristics of a society to the characteristics of the built environment, that comes from this idea of evolution, because one of the key ideas in evolution is the way species adapt to environments. And so here he has, a social group, a society, whatever, that is building an environment and adapting that environment to their use, and also being adapted by that environment, modified by that environment. And it's that interaction between the place and the people which he struggles to define all his life. And the reason, now I'm going to shut up, I promise. The reason why I think that's so important, okay, is because it keys directly into this idea of well-being, okay? How do we live well in the environment? Where in the environment do we derive our happiness, our satisfaction, our love lives, whatever it is? Where in the environment do we find that? And what is the relationship between those two things? And I think that it's probably safe to say that like everybody kind of knows what well-being is, but it's not easy to define, and it's impossible to measure. Okay, you simply there's no way to measure well-being, or if there are, they're trivial ways. It's probably why planning policy documents, which on the one hand flag well-being in the environment as a really key issue, on the other hand are simply unable to discuss it in any depth, okay? And it sort of the word well-being gets mentioned a lot and never really adequately defined. Now, I don't think Geddes can define it, but he's at least showing a kind of deepening of the thought about well-being, how it might be somehow about a relationship between the social formation and an environmental formation. And I think that, the problem with well-being, and now I really will stop, the problem with well-being is that it's subjective, okay? Which means that you can't go and ask people about well-being, are you feeling well, because everyone's going to give you a different answer. And so the only way to really drill into a subjective concept like well-being is to look at whatever it is that the subject is subjected to. So if you're talking about the subject of the city, you need to look at the city, right? You need to actually look at how it is that the built environment organizes the human subject's social and psychical relations, right? Okay, so, and that's exactly what Geddes is doing. He's actually trying to look at the environment and look at how it shapes a society, how it organizes, your relationships on an individual level, whether it's, a love relation, or on a social level, whether it's, politics or economics or whatnot. That's what he's looking at. And his key examples are the ones he sort of keeps coming back to. I should have mentioned at the beginning, then you'd know what I was talking about more, are the Greek city-state, the Greek polis, and a certain form of participatory democracy, which he sees intimately related. And the other one is the medieval university town, which he sees intimately related to this kind of scholastic contemplative life. Okay, so these are two places where he actually can find this direct correspondence. Okay, and that's kind of what's going on here. And I think I should probably stop. I mean, you've been patient to listen to all this. I just say again, the archives were great. They led to a lot of innovation in how we display the work. We had these steel plinths and the magnets. We developed that for this. The contributors were great. You can see their greatness just by looking at the work, but also they were really fun to work with. And finally, Matthew and Museum Services was just an unbelievably efficient machine. And my other co-researcher who can't speak, but his name is Deepak. I don't know where he is right now. He's got a bad cold. There he is. He does signing right now, but he can't speak. So everybody enjoy looking around.